welcome to Palace Confidential, part of a week of special programmes following the death of Her Majesty the Queen. Joining me today is the Daily Mail's royal editor Rebecca English and the paper's diary editor Richard Eden. Lots to discuss this week, and do stick around to the end of the programme for our beautiful gallery of the Queen with her dogs. Rebecca, we last heard from you the day following the Queen's passing. I imagine it's been non-stop for you since then?
It has, and actually I filmed that just before I was literally running down to Buckingham Palace to be with the new King and Queen, which still takes a little while getting used to.
Yes.
When they arrived back at Buckingham Palace, which was just, it was like spine tingling, because it was seeing history unfold and hearing people scream, "God bless the King," you know, God bless the new King, you're a good man, Charles. It was incredible scenes there. And
so what have you made of this outpouring of emotion? Because we've seen there's also a lot of grief out there as well, but a lot of sort of, you know, goodwill and love for the new King.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think we did expect a huge outpouring of grief for the Queen. You know, I'm sure you've discussed on the programme already, you know, she's the only monarch that most of us have ever known in our lives, and she's been a particularly exceptional one as well. And I think actually what's been sweet about that is the way that it's transcended generations. So you've seen older people kind of crying and mourning her, but you've seen little children kind of drop off Paddingtons and marmalade sandwiches, and you know, because they remember seeing her at her Jubilee in June. So there's been that. But I did a big piece about the new King in the paper yesterday. Sorry, it's all rolls into one at the moment.
We don't know what day it is.
But yesterday about the kind of projection of Charles as grandfather of the nation. I think what's been really amazing is the warmth of the welcome. Now, of course, there will be some bounce effect because obviously people are mourning his mother. But I can tell you now from being down at that palace on Friday that there was genuine goodwill to this man. And actually, I don't think he's put a foot wrong the last few days. You know, he's been out there meeting and greeting people as much as he can. I think his address on Friday was just pitch perfect, you know, and you got a sense of his real deep mourning for his mother, as well as the kind of genuine passion that he actually wants to do her proud and wants to continue this sense of duty that she's got and become a kind of grandfather to the nation. So I think it's been a remarkable few days. It's been a real privilege actually to have a ringside seat on that, I have to say.
It is, you know, it's watching, it's being part of history.
It is.
It's incredible. Richard, we've also seen some very moving pictures from Scotland over the last 24 hours, haven't we?
Yes, we have. I mean, it's really been quite a spectacle to see the people queuing up, to see the Queen's coffin lying at rest in St Giles's Cathedral, and, you know, all ages. You've seen people pretty infirm, actually. You've seen people in wheelchairs, people but queuing up for hours and coming from all over Scotland to do that and taking that opportunity before the coffin comes to London and then will lie in state. And I think it's been, I'm sure the people of Scotland have been delighted to have had that opportunity first, and I think it has been very symbolic.
I think it's what she would have wanted as well, actually, in truth. Scotland has such a special place in her heart. And I saw on the BBC this morning, actually, people interviewed that had travelled from London and Manchester to go to Scotland because they thought it would be their best chance of being able to pay their respects in a kind of with a slightly lesser crowd than they will be actually in the capital. And I think it's meant a lot to the family as well, that they felt that they could actually kind of grieve in the place, one of the places that she loved best.
Yeah, I mean, that photograph, you know, the images of of King Charles.
We must say, we know we've had some of you comment on us slipping that up. It might take us a few days, but we will.
It does take a while.
It does take a while. It's been a long 70 years. So, you know,
But the images of the King standing, keeping vigil in front of the coffin at St Giles's Cathedral is really poignant, I think.
Oh, I mean, I think I said it was actually a beautiful picture, but a really sad one as well. You know, seeing the kind of grief etched on his face, Princess Anne's face. Although, noticeably, I think that the angle from which the photograph was taken, you could see Anne, the King, and to a lesser extent the Earl of Wessex, but the Duke of York seemed to be tucked slightly around the back. I don't know whether that was deliberate or not. But
it's funny you raised the Duke of York, because I want to turn to a story you've written in today's paper about who gets to wear what at the Queen's funeral.
Yeah, it's been a big issue, and there's a reason why it's a big issue, because for the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral last year, we had a really good exclusive in the Mail that behind the scenes, Andrew really kicked up a fuss about him wanting to wear his vice-admiral's uniform. He was actually made an honorary vice-admiral by his mother for his 55th birthday, the kind of gifts that only the royal family can give each other. And he should have been promoted to admiral for his 60th, but because of the Epstein scandal, that was put on hold. But he still is entitled to wear this uniform.
The admiral uniform?
Vice-admiral's uniform, okay. Yeah. And he kicked up a stink. And as a result, actually a result of our story coming out, there were huge changes, and the Queen personally ruled that everyone had to wear mourning dress, so nobody could wear uniform. Yeah. So what's happened now is that obviously King Charles III has not wanted that to dominate the first few days of mourning their mother, and he's acted really decisively and has ruled that basically only working members of the royal family can wear uniforms, with one exception, that Andrew will be allowed to wear his Vice-Admiral's uniform when they perform a similar vigil to we were discussing before at Westminster before the state funeral. And I've been told that was a personal decision by him. It's going to be a last chance for a son to mourn his mother, and that he feels he should be able to do it. And of course it would look a bit incongruous that every other member of the royal family is in uniform except Andrew is in a mourning outfit. But of course the flip side is it means it just, you know, the whole Harry issue, it means that looks into stark relief that he really is the only member of the family that we'll never see in uniform during this. So it's complex.
What do you make of the exception for Andrew then, Richard?
I mean, it is a strange, rather sad situation, because look, the two members of the royal family who saw active service was Prince Andrew, who was very brave during the Falklands conflict. Yeah. He flew decoy missions, which are some of the most dangerous missions of the war. And then Prince Harry, who had 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. So both of them have the greatest right to wear uniform, but they gave that up. Unfortunately, you can't have it both ways. So it was the right decision by the King that they couldn't wear ceremonial uniform. I mean, Prince Harry will still be able to wear his medals with his mourning dress, the same as Andrew, but not his ceremonial uniform.
I have an idea. Just float this one out there.
Oh God, this is dangerous, Joe.
Andrew can dress as an admiral, but it has to be from the Admiral car insurance ad with the big sort of like hat and the crazy epaulets. And then I think he gets to be an admiral, and we get to sort of like still point him out as something slightly other than the rest of the royal family.
Well, there are some people, you know, not everyone's in favour of this stuff, so there are some people who view members of the royal family going round in this uniform when they feel some of them haven't earned it as being a bit like the Admiral car ad. So
I think it's a very spiffy look and very, very colourful.
I think they need to get you on board as an advisor, pretty sharpish.
I'm being facetious, of course, but I mean, it does sound childish to people, though, doesn't it? This kind of like, I want to wear that. He wants to wear that. It's crazy.
Yeah, but it's part and parcel of the royal family.
Why do they take it so seriously?
Well, you know, don't forget, the Queen was, and the King is now, head of the armed forces. And, you know, people who risk their lives in the military do it for King and now, well, King and country. So it's important for the family to be able to respond and be proud and show of that. But I know what you mean. There are some people going to think, what's the fuss? Yes,
and I suppose maybe some people, just putting it out there, might think, well, it's not about you today, it's about we're burying the longest-serving Queen.
I mean, look, while I think the King made the right decision in banning Harry and Andrew from wearing their uniforms, I think it was a mistake that he's allowed Andrew to wear his for this vigil in front of the Queen's coffin at Westminster Hall. It doesn't seem right for Prince Harry to then be denied any opportunity. I can't see the logic behind it at all, I'm afraid, that exception.
Do you think it's incredible and very telling, actually? Obviously, there's a lot already on the plate for King Charles, But these are early boundary testers and early indications of the way he's going to rule that family and that firm.
Well, it shows the challenges he's going to face, and the Queen could be very decisive. She would take decisive action, and it will be interesting to see if King Charles is similarly decisive. You know, if Prince Andrew makes a fuss about something, will he stand up to him? Will he put his foot down? All these things, he's going to be, the whole relations with his other family members are going to be very interesting to watch over coming weeks and months.
You say they could be decisive, but actually both the Queen and our new King hate family confrontations, and that's been part of the problem over the years, is that, you know, the Queen didn't want to upset her children, particularly people like Andrew, so that's why I think they were so slow in making some of the decisions that they did, especially over his recent problems. And, you know, the then Prince of Wales and now King is the same, you know, hence some of the issues with Harry, because he just doesn't like personal confrontation and likes other people. You deal with it, you deal with it. He's going to have to now, but I think that's why, as you say, it's very interesting. He's just laid down this marker very quickly, and I think Andrew knows that he's no longer got his mother to run to.
But perhaps he has William to delegate to?
Well, I certainly know when it came to, and I think you probably would have discussed this yesterday, the big kind of walkabout we saw at the weekend with Harry and Meghan and William and Kate. That decision was 100% William's. He didn't even discuss it with his father. He just instinctively knew it was a very human gesture. And to try and have a show of unity at a time of enormous personal sadness, but also public sadness. So I think it shows that William is stepping up to the plate and will make some of these decisions on behalf of his father.
And let's be clear, this decision by the King about the uniforms is a big one. I mean, Prince Harry and Meghan's admirers are absolutely furious about it. You know, they think it's outrageous that, you know, their hero.
Are you thinking of any one particular admirer there, Richard?
I've seen lots and lots, but I think it's fair to say that when they return to California, we might be hearing more about this.
Oh my goodness. Well, yesterday we reflected on the sometimes unsung hero of the royal family, Princess Anne, and today, Rebecca, you've written about Sophie Wessex, who was also very important to the Queen.
She was. I mean, Sophie lost her own mother very sadly at the age of just 71. She died of stomach cancer, and she was always close with the Queen, but obviously she grew closer after she lost her own mother. I mean, to the extent that she used to call her Mama, and there was this kind of, they used to walk the dogs together, and there was a real shared love of military history, for example, and they would pore over the Royal Archives at Windsor together. And you know, the Queen's very fond of her children, Louise and James. And years ago, someone told me about how the Queen used to actually sit down with them when they were little and watch Mr. Tumble. You know, she actually, I think, in a way, she was able to do with her grandchildren what she wasn't able to do with her own children, because she was, you know, a working mother at the kind of, you know, leading her country. And I think we were really taken by the scenes that we saw with Sophie, kind of hunkered down amongst the flowers at Balmoral and red-eyed and, you know, willing to show the grief that she was feeling and kind of hugging her daughter afterwards. And I just wanted to kind of capture a flavour of that, because the Queen considered Sophie a really safe pair of hands. And I think she'll be an important part of this kind of new monarchy moving forwards, because what I'm told is she's become very close to Kate. And I think as Princess of Wales, Kate will come to rely on her quite a lot as a kind of, almost as a kind of number two, as a deputy.
It's a tag team.
And William definitely thinks that Edward and Sophie are a safe pair of hands. So, and obviously with the loss of Harry and Meghan, which they didn't expect, I think, you know, their star will shine even more.
Who do you think King Charles will come to rely upon in that similar vein?
I would love it if he did with Prince Edward and Sophie. I mean, you know, he had this very clear vision of his slimmed-down monarchy, which was going to be him, Camilla, and his sons and their wives and families. And now that just hasn't happened with Harry and Meghan. And so I think he will need support. And I think Sophie and Edward and their family, I'm sure, will be happy to offer it.
And Princess Anne, Princess Royal as well.
It's those figures are the ones, aren't they, that are sort of hard-working but unassuming and not necessarily chasing the limelight or chasing the need to have a voice and all of those sorts of things. So I think, do you think that that's what makes them kind of solid as a rock.
Well, I was just going to use the word solid. I think Edward and Sophie, you know, some people might not view them as the most exciting royals, but they have been, you know, solid and safe for, you know, the last 20 years. You know, they had a few teething difficulties to start off with. They were kind of, as I wrote in the paper, they were kind of the Harry and Meghan of their day, wanting to have careers. Sophie as PR, Edward in television production, and they both got their fingers burnt for different reasons. But they decided to, you know, close down their businesses and just focus on their real duties, show some humility, and have just focused on that and supporting the Queen ever since. And I think that's borne dividends for them. I mean, of course, people want to see the King and the Queen and the Prince and Princess of Wales, but you know, I don't think people should be dismissive of the importance that people like Sophie and Edward and, of course, Princess Anne will play in the years to come.
Now let's have a quick chat about my favourite subject in the whole wide world: dogs.
Shoes?
Dogs, shoes. Let's talk about the dogs, and obviously there's there's all these things that come up when anybody in a family passes away, but the Queen's dogs are being rehomed, and they apparently do have a new home.
Well, they do. I mean, look, the Queen is an icon, but I think as part of her icon, I mean, you think, what do you think about the Queen? People will think hats, handbags and corgis, won't they? One day I'll tell you a funny story about me and the Queen corgis, but I don't know if it's quite the time. Remind me in a couple of weeks when I get through this.
Yes.
So that was one of the first things I thought is what's going to happen to the dogs, because I'm the same as you, shoes and dogs. Maybe children somewhere in there, but. They've got a new home, and they're going to the Duke of York and his ex-wife Sarah. But
how are the corgis feeling about that?
There is method in the madness, because actually she was down to her last two corgis, Mick and Sandy, and they were actually given to her as a gift by the Duke of York. So it kind of makes sense for them, and he does love his dog. He's got Norfolk Terriers. He walks the dogs at Frogmore, which is where the Queen used to walk her dogs. So I think actually it will probably help them, because there'll be less of a change in routine. Obviously they're going to mourn their master. You know, animals are very intuitive like that. But at least they're going to be in familiar surroundings. So, you know, it's not quite as odd as it might seem.
I mean, it just shows, doesn't it, Richard, this is a firm, and it's a vital state institution with all of the mechanics of that being looked at now. But it's also a family with those sort of little complications to deal with. What else do you think we might be having to consider over the next days and weeks?
I think there's lots of things like this. I mean, the Queen was very reluctant to have any dogs at all in her old age, and she only accepted them on the basis that they were from gifts from Fergie and Andrew, who would look after them if she couldn't. So it seems natural that they've gone back to them. We'll be finding out lots of these type of things, but it is a family. It's hard to remember that at times when you've got Prince Charles carrying out the whole business. This is the busiest week of his life, and that's a week that any of us would have a week off. We'd be off work at the death of our mothers, and so I think all we can do is sort of support them in that.
What happens, do you think, to that vast sort of like archive of possessions? I'm thinking, are we going to see in time a V&A collection of her clothes, or Jeremy, what do you think?
Well, I suppose those are her personal belongings.
Yeah.
So they'll go back to the family, and obviously we do see regular exhibitions at Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace and places like that of royal clothing. But I mean, that's part of our kind of nation's history. There's very few people in the world, maybe people like Jackie O or Marilyn Monroe, that you can just show a piece of clothing and you'll instinctively know who that belonged to.
Yeah.
And I think the Queen is up there with that. So that's probably a conversation for another day.
That's a whole other Palace Confidential special, but that is all we have time for at the moment. I'm sorry, we'll be following all these issues closely here on the next show on Palace Confidential. My thanks to Rebecca English, Richard Eden, and to you for watching. We'll stick with the theme of the late Queen's corgis, doggies and spaniels as we close the show. Here is a gallery of Her Majesty with her dogs. See you tomorrow.